Hi, everyone. It's good to be back. This is on this post. This is the first of my posts that I'm putting under the heading or collection of trigger warnings. I use that term somewhat humorously, but it's mostly to say that this post will actually include some references to modern life and political issues and all of that. So here we go. First, I want to say this morning, one of the first things I noticed was something on the news feed that the Columbia University had called in the New York Police Department to kind of break into the building that had been taken over and occupied by the protesters and basically arrest and evict them. And I got to say, when I saw that, I was kind of fairly disappointed because it meant it would be the end of a kind of side issue that I thought was remarkably humorous. And that is, in particular, once the protesters had kind of gone into the hall and taken it over and barricaded themselves in there, spraying the whole place with graffiti and nailing up barricades on the windows and doors. Then within 24 hours, they realized they didn't have enough food and water. And so they were demanding that Colombia feed them. That somehow their conditions without food and water were somehow relevant or analogous to the conditions of the Palestinian people, or that Colombia's response to not feed them was somehow analogous to the genocidal or the uncaring or the oppressive capitalistic state. And so I was hoping for that dialogue to go on further because I had all these fantasies of Colombia providing them with, like 150 McDonald's Happy Meals, and the protesters refusing it because it supported the capitalistic fast food industry and da 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 and I was just imagining this long negotiation about the new demands for something created by a French chef and all the food was biodynamically grown and no animals were harmed, etc. So, but unfortunately, all of that negotiation didn't come to pass, and whatever. And the second thing that came into that I saw this morning was a post from I get a feed called the Daily Stoic, and it's about kind of a daily lesson from uh, about Stoic philosophy, and I want to say something about the Stoics. I love Stoic philosophy, and Stoic philosophy kind of has been around for about 2,500 years. There were Stoic philosophers among the ancient Greeks and certainly among the ancient Romans, and and the and the the Stoics philosophers were in some sense at the core of Western civilization. Um, and so when I use that term Western civilization, one of the things I just want to mention is that I think Western civilization started with the philosophers of the Greeks, and then it certainly has been transferred down to the Romans and the Roman Empire, and it's incorporated elements from the the Judeo-Christian tradition from the Middle East, and it then incorporated the Renaissance and the scientific revolution of around the 1600s. And one of the things that I particularly wanted to say is that Western civilization is different than other kinds of civilization. Okay, it's had a 2,500 year run, and that's impressive. It's probably one of the greatest and longest lasting civilizations that the history of the world has ever seen. But one of the things that distinguishes Western civilization from virtually all others is that Western civilization is a system of ideas. It's not a civilization identified with a ethnic group or a religious group or a racial group. It is not a Western civilization is not it's not like the Ming Dynasty in China, which is regarded as a civilization. It's not like the the Hindu the Hindu civilization of India, which is focused around a particular religion. It's actually a system of ideas, and it started with the Greeks and with the Greek philosophers. And that word philosopher is important. It comes it's a mixture of two words, philos, love, and sophos, wisdom. Western civilization and philosophy is about the loving of wisdom. And that love of wisdom has not been limited to any ethnic or cultural group. Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist who fought slavery for years, talked about how he never felt excluded from the circle that included the philosophers of like John Locke and John Stuart Mill and the greats of Western civilization, that when he read those books, he felt as welcomed as he felt in any grouping that he'd been in his life. So I wanted to say that, what's unique about Western civilization is it's not a religious, cultural, or ethnically based and limited grouping. It's about the love of wisdom, and it definitely had its heyday, and certainly included the Greeks and the Romans and the Judeo-Christian heritage. But at times, the center of Western civilization was in Morocco. It was in the Arabic world, as at one point, I think around the 1500s, the Arab world was the center of mathematics. And so at one point, the center and the vibrancy of Western civilization was in North Africa, in the Arab world. And then, of course, in the Renaissance, it was in Florence, and art, again, a love of wisdom, and then became associated with science and mathematics and the scientific method. So, I just wanted to speak about that Western civilization is different than most all of the other civilizations you will read about in history or philosophy, if you're reading about civilizations. And in that, and I started by talking about the Stoics. And one of the things about the Stoics is they didn't see philosophy as some abstract endeavor. It wasn't about ideas and spending hours trying to, focusing on the minutia of the difference of this term or that term. The Stoics saw philosophy as very practical. And there were a lot of Stoic images that compared philosophy to like wrestling or boxing. And obviously wrestling and boxing are very kind of physical, full-bodied sports. So what the Stoics saw is that philosophy was a way of training the mind. And they had no illusions that there would ever be this state of perfect peace and harmony. But Stoic philosophy essentially took the point of view that the world will throw at you things that are uncomfortable. Just like someone facing you in a boxing ring, in a wrestling ring. The world will come at you in ways that are disturbing. So We might want to live in a world in which everyone is honest, but no one has ever lived in that world. People will talk to you and spin a tale, and then they'll rip you off. You'll go down the highway and someone will be just pissed off and angry, and they'll cut you off and cause you to feel frightened. And so the main message of Stoic philosophy was that it was like training your mind to do battle, so that as all of the disturbing things in the world came at you, you wouldn't respond in kind. Stoic philosophy was focused on virtues, the virtues of, and there's a whole list of virtues if I went into, really explaining it all, but the virtues of courage, the virtues of self-discipline, the virtues of justice. And for someone who was well trained, as the world brought itself to you with all of its ugliness and deceit and angry, resentful people and dishonest people, those could get you down. But the battle for the Stoic was to never let it impact your commitment to being the good and the best person you could be. So when someone cuts you off in traffic, you don't go into road rage and run them off the road. When someone does something and you see on your news feed something you don't like, you don't go into a rage and join the mob and trash them because you don't like how it makes you feel. Your job is to recognize that the world is difficult, that the world is filled with dishonest people, angry people. The world is filled with, Vladimir Putin's. The world is filled with, pick another person you have no respect for, Donald Trump's. The world is filled with vapid people, the Kardashians. The world is filled with all of these people you not only don't admire and don't want to emulate, but people who in some way degrade the possibilities of the human experience. And the lessons of Stoicism are about how can I accept that's the world? How can I enter my day almost like prepared for or expecting that some of that will be there, and yet still be committed to those virtues of self-discipline and temperance, to courage, to justice, to living my best? And how can I live and bring my best to the world and those I care about, even within all of that? So in one sense, we could say Stoicism is about a commitment to your soul, a commitment to living your biggest self, your best dream, your most cherished values in a world which often doesn't support it, in a world that either may not care or feel actively threatened by that. So today, I want to say, good on you, Stoics, but also good on you, Western civilization, because Western civilization is filled with that. It is filled with a love of wisdom, which is about how can I or we live a dream and live a life that brings out, not individually, personally, brings out the best in me, the best in you, the best in us. But how can we live a dream that supports bringing out the best in everyone? And ultimately, that's a tradition which is open to the world. So good on you, Stoics. Good on you, Western civilization. And I'm so sorry I didn't get to hear the negotiations around the quality of food. brought to the protesters who barricaded themselves in the building and then discovered they didn't have anything to eat. That would have been fun. All right. Be well. Adios.